It's like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now?
I know. What are we gonna do? Well, so the last podcast, the first one, you said something that was so profound, and I was thinking about it ever since, which is that line from Ken that you quoted that I thought, oh, where is it? And
Um,
the one that where it says in the tread lightly on my dreams, Lighthouse.
yes, yes. It's
The we
he does not coerce or impose guilt, but rather truth steps aside and frees up space for our illusions. And
to hold right,
that's the gentle path. That's the gentle path because we have too much fear to do anything that's direct learning. So this is kind of like the indirect learning, and I think it's part of kindness too. It's the kindness that he's such. The role model he puts forth is a role model, a model of kindness and gentleness, and then
right,
we learn that and we go out in the world and our experiences, if we bring him with us, are of kindness because we can't be kind without him.
right,
It's a shift in identity. It's not just a shift in your mood
exactly,
or
right,
let me
right.
open the door for someone.
It's a whole
It's
different me.
yeah. So that's what I found interesting about this article. Yeah,
Right.
it just points to kindness and gentleness.
And it's both on both sides. It goes outward and inward. It's to allow others to have their own ego process,
Yeah.
and don't. I remember Ken saying in many of his tapes that he would say sometimes people go into hospitals where a course student is and they say, don't you know sickness is a defense against the truth? Come on, just forgive and be healed. And it's he. I think he exemplified that so much, that gentleness to just take our illusions and kind of make us be okay with them. Don't force anything prematurely. You
Yes,
know what?
because taking anything seriously is that's ego domain right there.
Right,
And he
right,
taught us, even from the tiny mad idea, from the very top of Ken's chart, where the tiny mad idea supposedly took place, was the Holy Spirit's answer. He didn't take it seriously. He says, "Oh, that's a silly idea." So he
right,
gave it no weight,
right, right.
and
And then the weight.
that's what we do. That's what we should take into the world when we feel we are attacked or get upset over anything. Any form of judgment.
Right.
Judgment separates. It differentiates. If
So
you're
there's
different
this.
from me, yeah. Go ahead.
Uh, there's this line in the course. So there's this process with the course, and we talked about that a little bit last time. So here's this chapter 12, section 1. The chapter is called the judgment. The section is called the judgment of the Holy Spirit, and it says in paragraph 4. It says, and that's similar to what you said, but then Jesus adds something because he's just only ever so slightly smarter than you. Not a lot, just a little tiny little bit. You know what I mean? So he has to add a little bit to what you said, so that
Not
he
to
feels good. He feels good about himself. You know what I
not to
mean?
mention a smart aleck. He really can be snarky. But that is the humor of it.
Right.
He tears down our ego with his snarkiness, and it just makes
Pitchfork, the pitchforks.
it just makes you smile. Yeah, yeah.
So he says, there's nothing to prevent you from recognizing all calls for help as exactly what they are, which is what you were talking about, right? To not take somebody else's defenses seriously. Accept your own imagined need to attack. And I think then that would then be the process of the course, to look at, can we or are we taking somebody else's defenses seriously, and are we engaging in them, right? And if we're not, if we're really above the battleground and say, at this very moment, it doesn't bother me at all, I'm going to let you do whatever you want, and I'm just going to help you in any way I can, I'll be with you. And then there are those times, or those people, there are some people with which it is much harder. And that's when our imagined need to attack them and deposit our guilt onto them. And then it makes it impossible to be to see the guilt, to see their behavior, or to not put weight on their illusions. Right? Then we're going right in and say, no, you got to change that, and you have to read in the course more, or you have to do what Jesus tells you to do. Right? So there's those two levels almost in the process of, if we can't do what he says, then step out of the ego and look at what you can do, in a way. That need to attack the other person that stands in the way of us being defenseless and accepting the other's illusion as just what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, what we're telling that person is that you have sinned, and that's heavy.
Exactly.
And if we don't take someone's attack, if we say in the face of attack, you have not hurt me, you have not taken the peace of God away from me, and it's not verbally. You say it after after you're in that presence with the Holy Spirit or Jesus, and you don't take it personally. We're telling that person they are sinless.
Right.
They are sinless when we don't take attack personally. So it's really a big deal.
Right.
And of course that's mirrored back to us when we also have that same identity. It's a mirror. So,
Right.
yeah.
And the moment we can't do that, for those of us who, myself, I probably, if I'm totally honest, I'm definitely more in the space of taking somebody else's defenses seriously than not. If I divide the day into, let's say, 100 units of watching people or interacting with people, I can see myself at least 80, 85, 90%. My first reaction is to see those illusions, to see what people are doing. It fluctuates a lot, but I always feel like, for me personally, I'm always tending more towards, I'm probably more in my ego than my right mind, just to be on the safe side and not feeling like, oh, I'm in my right mind, but I'm really not,
Yeah, I agree. That keeps us here in the world. It's our safety. It's
Right.
our default. But I think that when we haven't, like, I had a big ego attack yesterday. I was like looking at everything wrong. It was like nothing
Nice.
could be.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's just a huge ego attack. There's just a argument, and it was what was interesting. I saw myself being drawn into it, but I also knew that I could look at this from above the battleground, looking down at the dream figures discussing something, and everything seemed so serious, and it wasn't really, but at the time it seems that way.
Right.
And everyone is like buying into the story, and it was just a really interesting phenomenon to be able to know that I was judging, the situation,
Right.
but I didn't judge the judger.
Right.
Does that make any sense? I
Yes.
kind of looked and said, "Oh, she's getting real in on that and
Yeah.
joining in on the dance floor, of death." And I just was like, not judging the judger, and that doesn't usually happen. But I purposely said, "Okay, it's time to do that here in this situation where everything seems like, oh, temporarily serious at least, but
Right.
not
Right.
really." And yeah, it was very, very interesting. And I think that's our way out. That's our kind of that's the kindness we give to ourselves in choosing the Holy Spirit or Jesus to view what we think we see in the outside world.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very good. And that also brings back or goes back on the inside, which is when you study the course or when you read the course or when we read the course and Jesus tells us what we said last time, for example, to look at your brother through the eyes of Christ, right? And this whole section that Ken talks about in the Tread Lightly on My Dreams,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like Jesus is asking us to tread lightly on our own dreams because we are where we are in our process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we might read a line, and that's why I thought what you said last week was so important to give ourselves, frees up the space for our illusions to hold forth, to give ourselves the space to be in our ego as much as we are in our ego because our fear is so great.
And
You
isn't
know,
that the kindness? Because
that is the kindness, right?
if we were to coerce ourselves, oh, we're not doing
Right,
this right. Oh, we're not doing the workbook as much. The lessons we're not remembering. That is precisely when the ego hops in,
hmm
and then it's all it's all about judgment.
right,
So,
right,
and you're right. It's like not judging the judger.
right,
it's it's you're choosing magic
right,
over miracles, but then you're not judging yourself for
right,
choosing magic,
right,
and
right,
that's the whole ball game right there. Although that it seems to be kind of like a little bit of a hidden message, but it's not. It's just
right.
yeah.
In
So
um, in the workbook in the forgiveness section where it says what is forgiveness on page 401 or 402, and those are the lines that Ken always reads. Forgiveness is still and quietly does nothing. It merely looks and waits and judges not.
yeah,
And this is the correction I think for it's 401, yeah, page 401. That's the correction I think for the ego that jumps in right away and says, no, 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 you have to do what Jesus tells you to do. You have to not judge, right? It's really interesting that the ego says you don't judge,
right.
right? It's so interesting because you wouldn't say the ego would say that because the
But
ego says, no, no, no,
the
you
ego is judging when it's saying don't judge.
exactly,
It's already
exactly,
done that. Yeah.
right. And I think there's a big, at least from my experience, there's a huge spiritual community out there and in within us that lives by that to try not to judge, try to be a good boy,
Yes.
right? Or a good girl and
Yes.
don't judge the other, be spiritual, be open-minded, be kind. It's the ego would also say be kind to the other person. Why can't you be kind to the other person?
Because
Right?
the ego can't do it. The ego
Right,
can't
the
be
ego.
kind. But you're
Right,
right. Your point is that it hops on the journey with us and we don't realize it. And
right,
it's
right,
yeah, you're absolutely right. I've noticed that in people. They're afraid to correct someone, they're afraid to say anything so-called negative, but Ken was never afraid to say anything
Right.
that seemed to be negative, but it really wasn't. It was always done with love and to put you back on the path. To
Right.
put, you're derailed, so let's put you back on.
Slap you back on the tracks, you know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I think that's necessary to keep the course. How would you say? It's necessary to protect the message, to protect the course in miracles,
Right.
because people do go off track and they start
Right.
mixing different spiritualities, and that's fine if they're curious. I used to be curious as well, but I think it's very important to really stick with the purity and the message and not go off course.
Right.
And to notice when we do, because that's just the fear of the message, just to notice that.
Right. Right.
Hi, puppy.
Yeah, it's so funny. I come up here, I start talking upstairs in this room, the door is closed, and she barks. She doesn't bark. She barks once in a while,
She wants to, and she wants to be with you,
But
and
then she comes up and then she goes back down again.
Mhm.
She's weird. I'm admitting it to myself that she's a weird dog.
she's checking on you
She
to
is.
make sure that you're saying everything correctly and the podcast is
Stay
right.
on track.
Yeah. There's a huge hawk that just landed on the tree outside. I wish I could show
Oh, really?
that. Yeah, big hawk landed. Very, very close, probably 15 feet away. Amazing. Beautiful. Yeah.
You should open the window, see what happens.
I should. Let me see if I can show that to you. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, yeah, I see it. The silhouette.
Yes.
Wow. It's still light where you are. I'm totally dark.
Can you believe it?
I am
You're
in the
totally
total
dark
black.
already. Oh, wow. Wow. That's weird. The time changes, and maybe someday Congress will pass a law where we can just.
I was hoping for that.
Yeah, me too.
Just leave it in one thing. That's it.
That's right.
So there's this paragraph that comes a little bit after the one that you mentioned, which is at the end of that section, just before it says the kindness of magic. And just the word alone, the kindness of magic, is amazing, because because Jesus talks about magic so much, and as we look at the course with our ego, we must interpret it as hostile or as coercive. We must do that because we can't do anything else. If we're in our ego, we must perceive something in the course that isn't there, and we might perceive in the course that Jesus says, do not use magic. Right? Magic is kind of an evil word. It's kind of a sin inside the course. Don't use magic. Right? And Ken says very clearly in those whole 5 pages or 6 pages, don't see magic as the bad guy. And in this paragraph it says the point here is that the magic of our defenses is needed until the fear of love abates sufficiently to allow the light of truth to once again shine into the mind that has been cowering in the dark recesses of fear.
Wow.
We're cowering in the deep recesses of fear, and magic is extremely important to us.
Yes. Yes.
An ibuprofen is very important to take it. If we should take it, the doctor says take it. We should not try to be spiritual and say, no, the power of my mind is such that I can actually heal myself from this headache. If we can, right? If we can, that's fine. But if we can't, we should take it, because that's the most kind thing to do.
That's right. That's a
right?
really good point. Yeah. Another sentence he says is that the magic of our defenses is needed until the fear of love abates sufficiently.
Right,
So we are in. That's right before. Oh no, I
right.
think that's part of what you read,
Yeah,
actually. And and he says, without kindness, Jesus' intellectual teachings would be meaningless.
right.
So there you go. I mean, you can study its theory and to, you can study it very thoroughly. And if you don't pick up the thread of kindness to bring it with you into the world that we made, then the theory, it
It's
has no
meaningless. Right,
use. Right,
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 right.
exactly. So it's really just fascinating. For some reason, I'm on this week. It's just been coming up for me to look up kindness and ruminate on it and the meaningfulness of it, because it has nothing to do with baking a cake for someone, although it could. That it's nothing about form.
If you want to send it to me, it would be a very kind gesture, Marisa.
Certainly
I mean,
will.
I'll be honest with you.
You send me spaghetti, okay?
In a loose box.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's this so I have this thing, I don't know if you have it, but this is the foundation, the foundation for Course in Miracles there. So a student painted, and it's called the Head of Christ, and it has replaced, like 20 or 25 years ago or 30 years ago, it has replaced that other picture that I had of Jesus, where he was this very cheesy, sitting on this mountaintop praying into the moonlight, very serious. And this always kind of, from that point on, was kind of the new one, the new Jesus.
Yes, there was
So
a 16 by 20 in Temecula hanging on the
yes,
wall
that's right, that's
on
right.
the
And I
left
think
side as you walk in.
also, um, forgiving Jesus, I think, might be, this is the
Yeah,
German translation of
yeah,
forgiving Jesus, die
wonderful.
Vergebung Jesus.
Very, very.
Um, so what my point is in this whole thing is that if we can manage, I think, if we can manage to look at our ego, we go through our day, and we usually normally get pulled in. There's no way we don't get pulled in, right? We get pulled into our judgment of others and all this stuff, and then we get pulled into what would Jesus do, or what would the Course say, right? And then we read in the Course, and what Jesus teaches is so far from where I am at this very moment that I'm like, I can't even go there, right? Without pretending. I can only pretend that I can be there. But if I'm honest with myself, I can't go there. So I have developed this overriding principle in a way that I can always go one step back, and the overriding principle is that Jesus says, I'm forgiven. Whatever it is I'm involved in, whatever it is I can do or not do, or how much I'm judging, or how much I'm trying not to judge, and how much I'm using magic, the overriding principle is Jesus says, I'm completely forgiven. There's nothing to forgive,
Mhm.
right? Whether I'm taking this aspirin or not, whether I'm doing this workbook lesson correctly or not, I am 100% forgiven. And even though I can't accept that,
Right.
that is the overriding, the Son of God is guiltless. That is the overriding principle of the Course.
Yeah,
Anything else is kind of below that, like an umbrella, that
that's
covers
right.
it.
Yeah, and it's our resistance to that message that leads us to not really take that in and
Right.
to view our whole journey sometimes through the ego's eyes, and
Right.
or at least it slips in now and
Oh,
then.
totally.
And yeah, that we don't realize how much we don't have to do. We just need that little willingness,
Exactly.
you know.
Yep.
And there's a in section, I think it's chapter 14, section 4, says the Holy Spirit will not delay in answering your every question what to do. He knows, and he will tell you, and then do it for you. You who are tired will find this is more restful than sleep, for you can bring your guilt into sleeping, but not into this.
Right.
That's the help.
Right.
So when we choose the help, then that's the only way we can choose kindness
Right.
or non-judgment. Yeah, the whole gamut.
That's very good.
We have to change teachers. Yeah.
Can
And
you
the
tell me
thought,
again? Can you tell me again which chapter it is?
sure, chapter 14, section
Yeah.
4, paragraph 6, sentences 1 through 8.
Okay.
I only read you part of it though.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, the function of in the atonement. Okay. Okay. So you brought up a good point of doing too much. You know, if we could, it just came to me, if we could, in any situation that we're applying the course to our lives, and most of those times when we apply the course to our lives is through struggle, right? We're struggling in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
If we could always say, I need to do less than I think I have to do. Because the ego always comes in and says, no, 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 you have to do more. And Jesus says, no, 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 you have to do less. So
And
whenever we're right in a,
yeah, it's a way of saying, Jesus, you're wrong and I'm right.
that's right. That's
I'm
right.
doing this wrong. My ego made the decision.
Right. Right. And to be in that mindset of, I don't know what to do, but I probably have to do less than I think.
Yeah, we
You know,
just
I
have
have to do,
we have to do what we don't want to do, and that is withdraw our projections from the outside world. We don't want to do that. We want to just
right,
read a really nice paragraph from the course and think, oh, look how beautiful that paragraph is. But
right,
that can sometimes, when you focus just on the beauty, take us away from our real work. And the real
right,
work is sometimes looking at some ugly stuff,
right,
you know.
right. And
It's
then
not a pretty thing to look at, you know.
it's pretty ugly.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
And
And
then to stop though, right? Not to go further, not to try to change anything. To look at the illusion and let the illusion stand. Let our judgment of others stand, right? Let our whatever, if we have an ego attack, let it be there. Give ourselves that room that the illusion needs, because our fear is too great to just stop doing it,
that's right.
right?
And we'll keep piling on the judgments if we keep judging our judgments. We'll just keep
Exactly.
piling on those
Right.
layers, and pretty soon we just won't be able to see that there's a choice in our
Right.
mind. So we don't judge the judger, and that's really difficult because we actually want to, because
Totally.
we obviously are being victimized by the world. So
Obviously.
obviously, so if I judge the situation, then that means it's real. Something is really impinging on me.
Right.
And if we don't judge the judger, which is me as a dream figure having a problem in the world or an upset or what have you, then that whole mechanism breaks, and
Right.
it doesn't work, and love flows through. We were
You're
able.
breaking the wheel. You're breaking the wheel, Daenerys.
Daenerys. That's right. You better believe it. Yeah. It's a paradox, isn't it? It's
Right.
people often think Oh, you need to look at the beautiful passages and remind yourself of God. And, you know, if we wanted to stay there, we would have never left heaven. So, what's keeping us from it?
Right.
Well, we made a world, for one thing, to keep him out, and then feel guilty over it so much that we have to throw our brother under the bus
Right.
in order for us to feel okay. I'm not the victimizer of God. That guy is, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so to look at that and to find these minuscule thoughts that happen in our mind of murder, like
Right.
you don't like what someone said, you don't like this, you don't like, you know, or got into an argument with someone, that's murder because you're first of all seeing a difference. He and I are different, and he's the victimizer, I'm the victim. And I mean, that's what that is. That's murder.
Right.
So at least, you know, in the world, in our thoughts, we're throwing our brother over the precipice
Right.
in that instant. So how did we get to murder? How did that come up? I just wanted to
It's
invest in
just in your
drama.
nature. It's
We
just in
just
your
need
nature. I mean,
drama.
you can't help it. You just have to go there, you know.
I know. It
Yeah,
really.
not me, but you
I
know.
know. It's you're
I'm
the
free of
angel.
murder, except that one time. In did I tell you about when I killed Jesus?
No, you didn't tell me about that.
Um, just because we're talking about murder, it's a happy story, you know. I like to tell happy stories. So I was at the foundation for this 3 months retreat in Roscoe, and it was pretty intense. And there was one morning when I woke up, I was lying in bed, and I had this really intense sense of hatred for like everything and everybody, right? Whoever I thought of got like a chunk of it, and it was really intense. I didn't know what to do about it, and during the day, I was talking to Gloria for a second, and she said, "Just keep going, see where it leads you." Right. So at night, I was lying in bed, and I was thinking about it again, and I went right back. I had this like intense hatred in me, and there was where my room was a little motel. It was kind of like a 15 rooms, one next to the other, with a big veranda, like a
Like
huge
like the Bates
veranda, right?
Motel,
And
like the
so
Bates
in my
Motel in Psycho. Did you ever see the movie?
yes, but
Yeah.
it was like a flat, just like flat, one story. And in my thoughts, I went out the door, and there were people on the veranda drinking something or talking, and I would push them over the railing, or I would throw them through the window, and or punch them or whatever. And I was a little scared of that. And then I said, you know what? Let's just go there. In my thoughts, I was imagining that. So I was punching and kicking and throwing people over the railing until nobody was there. At the end, Jesus stood there, right? And for me, it was this, with this image, with his robe, and I all of a sudden had a sword in my hand, and I did not hesitate 1 second, and I was just like
Wow.
cut off the head, the
Mhm.
two arms, like in
Mhm.
a swings, beautiful motion,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
I stabbed him in the heart, and
Mhm.
I remember turning the hilt a little bit, just like, oh, and he,
Oh,
he fell to the ground, and I took the sword and I rammed it into the floor, like into the wood, like, and I was so filled with hatred, and I could see the sword going like this, like swaying,
yeah.
and I was looking at the sword. There was blood everywhere. I mean, it was a bloodbath, like
Wow.
Kill Bill. It was really bloody.
Wow.
And he was lying on the ground, and I was looking at the sword, and all of a sudden, roots would come out of the bottom of the sword and go into the wood, and the sword would change into a lily. And I turned around, and he stood there and he said, "You cannot kill me."
Wow.
And at that point, I totally started crying, and I was lying in my bed. I was just like sobbing, and
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, he hugged me, and it took like another 20 seconds or something, and then it was over. But that was so. I mean, that stayed with me. It still
Mm-hmm.
stays with me. To first of all, to realize that intensity of that murderous thought with him, and then to go through with it, because as a Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what the hell are you doing, right? That is like the last thing you should even think about.
Well, that's what happened in the Crusades, right? For the
Right,
Prince of Peace, they
exactly. Right. But then
killed.
if you kill Jesus, I mean, that's like God is right there and says, "Hey,
Right,
I'm going to throw you right down the, you know, into
right.
the fire." But that other thing, that you can't kill me, that message is really, I felt like that would be the message of the course, to,
You
have
can't hurt
him be that model.
me. You can't hurt me. Hmm.
Right.
Which means you are sinless, even though you
Right.
you wielded your sword against him.
Right.
You were the sinless one.
Right.
Isn't that something
It's
to learn?
something.
To learn to take with you that
Right.
nothing happened. You weren't. You're not able to hurt me, and you can't decimate love. That's like a symbol for the tiny mad idea that nothing occurred.
Right.
That's pretty amazing and dramatic, and I would remember that certainly if that
Yeah.
happened to me. So was that a waking dream, a sleeping dream? Was
It
that
was a waking
Mhm.
kind of a. I just felt that hatred, and I thought, okay, I'm just
Let me
gonna let my
explore.
imagination,
Mhm. Let me explore this. Hmm.
explore it. Even though I was a little afraid to let myself go there, but I
Yeah.
mean, it it didn't make things better. It made actually things worse. Because a lot of stuff came up, and it continued to do so over the last 30 years. That was kind of the beginning
Hmm.
of this relationship, and it wasn't like, oh my god, now we all have just like rainbows and unicorns hopping around. This was he was basically
That's a
saying, okay, so
cover.
let's start now. Let's
That's a
start.
cover. Yeah, that's a
Right.
facade. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's really that's deep work, and that's deep learning because you have the opportunity to see yourself as the murderer that we all think we are, and then be told that nothing happened,
Right.
that you're a lily,
Right.
you are still a son of God.
And even the thing that you used can be used for forgiveness. The sword becomes the lily.
Oh, that something? Yeah, that's a great symbolism.
Right.
Great symbolism.
Right.
I can use that. I can use that. I'm very visual, so that often works for me to find something to think about like that, um,
Right.
and bring it back up again in certain situations. But yes, similarly, this week I got a nice little note from someone, and I I was looking at the note and I realized, I saw love in it. It wasn't about the words; it was just about just a kind note sent to me, and I realized, oh, this kind of overwhelming feeling of love at that moment. And I put the note down and I said, no, 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 I can't do this. And I was talking to Jesus. I said, no, I can't do this. This is too frightening right now. I see it right now. I see it, but I'm saying no right now. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know if for some reason in that note, it precipitated this experience. And then I was really, really, I saw myself say, no, no, I don't,
Interesting. Right.
So that's something for me to look at,
Mm.
pushing
Well,
love away.
that is the core, though. That is, Ken always says he doesn't need our yeses. He needs our no. That's really the core. I mean, that you can't go any further. That's it, other than to realize I'm saying no to Jesus right now.
Exactly. And it's usually, you can't notice it. We say no all the time. We drop his hand here, we drop
Right,
his hand.
exactly.
But
Right,
this was like confronting it right in front of me, and I said no.
right.
And so I just, and for some reason, no judgment for
Hmm.
myself for saying that. So all I can think of is I was not in my ego at that moment looking at the
Right,
situation, even though I said no. So not judging the judger, right?
right. Now, when did that happen? Yesterday?
Um, maybe 3 days ago,
Okay. I
three
mean,
or
because
4 days.
I always have this. It's literally a little bit like a roller coaster, but it is. So you have this a little profound holy instant, right, where you realize I'm saying no to Jesus, and at that very moment you're probably with him, and you're not judging yourself, and then a day goes by, and the ego sneaks in from behind you and says, "What you did yesterday was really not great. It was really a bad thing to say no to God. You said no to God again. Jesus." So, and then the guilt, I mean, I can see
That
it for
had to be
myself.
connected. Yeah, that had to be, even though I said no, which is what my
Right.
ego wanted, it had to
Yeah,
be connected. Yeah. Because
totally.
all of a sudden I saw, the heaviness of this discussion happening in front of
Yeah,
me, and I judged it. I certainly did. I
right,
said, "Oh, this is heaviness." People were arguing and trying to find a solution, and definitely judged it and was in it 100%. But I
right,
but I also was looking at it from another standpoint.
right,
Just
right.
kind of little detached.
How
So
do you feel when that happens? What do you feel at that very moment? I would be interested in hearing that because I can tell you what I feel. But what's your feeling? Can
my
you
feeling,
identify?
yeah, I feel anxious and out of control, and people aren't doing what I want them to do. Kind of like we said to God, you're not giving me enough attention. And it
Mhm.
wasn't about attention. It was like just not something happening that I didn't want, didn't fulfill my needs. And so anxious and pretty much anxious at that time.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I feel the same way, and it's interesting to hear that other people feel the same way in those situations.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been thinking about that a lot. I mean, because it happens quite often. You catch some, especially if you have teenagers in the house. I mean, it's hello. You're in the pits.
Mhm.
And it can happen any day, any time, for any reason or no reason at all. The dishwasher is sometimes involved. Who knows, right?
That's
And what I realized for myself is that when I feel anxious in a situation like that, and I'm not far enough ahead to identify the attack that must have happened before. I can only feel the fear. I can feel the anxiousness, but I'm not in touch with you. There cannot be fear without attack, right? Because all we feel, and just for myself, when I'm anxious or afraid, I must be afraid that the guilt that I try to push out is coming back, right? It's kind of like, ooh, I'm getting the guilt, no, and the anxious feeling.
yeah.
So I
And
can't,
that we
I
attacked
can't,
first. And that we attacked first.
yes, and I
Yeah.
can't identify it. I,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying to, like, okay, where was the attack? There must have been one, but I'm not. able to kind of grab it.
Mm-hmm.
When I go into the situation, because the Course says when you already have decided, the situation comes after your decision,
Mm-hmm.
right? To get rid of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't grasp. It's like, I missed it, because I can't feel the attack. I can only feel the anxiousness.
Yeah, I remember Ken saying that as we get better and better at this, it only takes a few seconds to realize where this came from, and that you dropped Jesus' hand and then you attacked, or you perceive attack outside of you. Yeah, he says it gets smaller and smaller as we go on, that we are able to catch that moment where we dropped his hand. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've got some ways to go because I've been trying to do that for 30 years. Like, I'm
Well,
gonna catch you.
you I mean, they can be just thoughts, not even something that
Oh
happened.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
Right.
So somewhere you dropped his hand, or you pushed him away, or the Holy Spirit, whichever you like to use, and then that that happened. The guilt, then the fear,
Right.
and then the projection.
Now, is it possible that because when we talk about dropping Jesus's hand, what about the people involved? Because they would be the same, right? Because I feel the same way, like you say. If one of Amy's daughters, if there's some kind of argument with somebody else and I'm a bystander, I get anxious. So I must have dropped their hand, right?
Separate.
I must have dropped
Separate
their
from
hand.
Jesus, you separate from everybody.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I must have separated from them. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel the need to attack, and then also
Mm-hmm.
the anxiousness.
That's right. An interesting phenomenon was kind of like the reverse. A few weeks ago, I was having a discussion with Andre, my husband, and we were discussing something, who's right, who's wrong, blah, 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 how things go. And suddenly I withdrew myself from the argument, and I just said, oh, yeah, you got a good point there. But I was very conscious of that. I said to myself, let me see if I just get out of this, leave the dance floor, and then there's just
Uh-oh.
one person arguing,
You're
or just,
frozen.
and he froze.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
yeah.
Listen, you were just frozen.
Oh, was I
You were
frozen?
just
Well, I was just
frozen.
about to say he froze. He didn't know what to do. It was almost like the script had a glitch in it. It was like a glitch, and he was like frozen. And like, oh, it was the weirdest thing. I stepped off the dance floor, and I
Right,
just removed myself, not physically, but and
right,
I just gave him love at that time, and it was like a glitch. He didn't know what to do.
right,
It was a
right.
funny thing. Yeah,
That is interesting.
isn't that funny?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like, wait, he froze, and it felt for a minute. It felt like, oh, maybe this is a script. You know?
right. The matrix has been manipulated.
Right, right. And I picked a different DVD, as Ken,
Right.
Ken talks about the DVD library, and
Yeah.
now we're on to MP3s and then streaming.
And yep,
Right.
streaming. Yep.
So we have to update that, right? But
Right.
I picked a different DVD, apparently. But yeah.
That's great.
Anyway, that was interesting.
That's a very good example.
Oh, freezing.
Right.
Yeah. So
So I wanted to have. I was thinking about Matthew Perry
yeah, from
from
Friends.
Friends.
He
Yeah.
recently passed away.
Yeah. And he was in an interview where somebody told him, when you're an alcoholic, you decide that you're drinking or not. It's your choice whether or not you become an alcoholic and whether or not you're drinking, right? That glass that you take, that's your choice. And Matthew said, no, I have no choice in the matter. And I was thinking about that. And actually, after we spoke last week, I was thinking about it a lot. And I have to agree with him. I have to agree with Matthew, even though the Course says, everything you do is a choice, right? That's like the bottom line of the Course. Whatever you think is a choice, whatever you feel is a choice, and whatever. And I think that comes into play with the kindness to your illusions. If the moment and you tell me what you think about that, the moment we go into the ego, we buy the whole thing, right? We have the tiny mad idea, we're sinful, the next thing that follows is guilt, the next thing that follows is attack on God, we have fear, we fragment, we go into the world, and we are identified with this body, and we go even further that we're addicted to a substance to just dull the pain from that separation, right? So,
or to be a victim, that God
to be a victim, right?
will not come and destroy me because look at me.
Right, exactly. I'm helpless.
Right.
But we have given up our ability to decide in that process. We can't just, at the bottom of the pit in the world, we can't just say, I'm not gonna take a drink. We have given up this decision way up the ladder when we said, okay, yes, I am sinful. We have given up that choice. We have left the point of choice in our mind. That was the ego's goal, right? And we went all the way down, all the way down. And we're at the bottom of the pit. And now we say, and now somebody tells us, no, you can decide not to be an alcoholic. And I'm saying you cannot. You have work. There's a lot of work to do before we can get back to that point of saying, like, I can decide not to be sick, but I can't, right? I need the ibuprofen. I need the drink, or I need to go into rehab, or whatever it is. The kindness of the illusion, what Ken said, to be kind to ourselves and realize we can't make that decision. If we could, we would.
And
No? I don't know.
sometimes
So you tell me.
sometimes we can make that decision because when we connect with Jesus or the Holy Spirit, we aren't at the bottom of the ladder anymore. And sometimes we can give up the purpose that it served. And when we switch purpose, then something can happen. It always happens when we switch purpose, but sometimes it can show up in form. It just depends on how attached we are to holding on to whatever affliction we have or what special relationship we have, that it's useful for us in keeping us safe from love. But we can indeed have sometimes something happening in form
Right.
where it shows our right-minded choice.
Right.
That can happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is very interesting. But, like you said, it takes deep learning and also giving it over to the Holy Spirit or Jesus and saying, I was using this to stay away from you.
Right.
And
Right.
not judging the drinking or whatever it is that you're struggling with, whatever situation. Being with them is the only way to not judge the so-called affliction.
Right.
And we can see it differently and possibly give up the purpose. Sometimes we don't want to, so we just look at that.
Right.
But I think it can happen because the power of our mind. We're not weak, and we're not little. We're grandiose, but we're not. The power of our mind is so great. Look what we made, and look what we believe.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Sounds
I've
good.
had the experience of that happening where I just kind of let something go. It was an earache. It was an excruciating earache, and yeah, doesn't always work. Sometimes we want to hold on to these. There are
Right.
safety blankets, our security blankets.
Right. Right.
But at that time, I sent my husband to go get some antibiotics, and by the time he got back, we were on vacation. It was excruciating, and by the time he got back to where I was, and he went back to the room to get it, it was gone. Because
Right.
I told Jesus, I said, this is why this is here. I'm pushing you away. And I laughed at it. I just laughed. I said, this is really funny. This is really silly. And then I was going to just take the antibiotics, but it disappeared
Right.
by the time he got back. So always drawing our attention to form.
Right. Right.
And then we can.
Oh,
Excuse
what's
me.
that? Is the chicken done?
The chicken. The chicken's done. Oh, yeah. I got a phone call. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. We can edit that out. Hopefully. Just a second.
Wow, it's already almost an hour.
I know it already.
So there is a nice paragraph that is at the very end of this, not totally at the end, but towards the end of this. Actually, there are two paragraphs. One is in the text, chapter 27, section 7. Paragraph 15. Wow. 27:7. 27:7. Paragraph 15 and the first 4 sentences. It says, "Dream softly of your sinless brother, who unites with you in holy innocence. And from this dream, the Lord of heaven will himself awaken his beloved son. Dream of your brother's kindnesses instead of dwelling in your dreams on his mistakes. Select his thoughtfulness to dream about instead of counting up the hurts he gave." And obviously that's a beautiful paragraph, but, and that's a big but, like Ken always says, there's always a but. And that but hurts sometimes. That is, if we switch that around and apply it to us, right? Dream softly of your sinless brother. Dream softly of yourself as sinless. Mm-hmm. And from this dream, the Lord of heaven will himself awaken his beloved son, which is us. Dream of ourselves kindness instead of dwelling in your dream on our mistakes. Select our thoughtfulness to dream about instead of counting up the hurts we gave. Right? Yeah. Especially in relation to doing the course,
Yeah.
Because we can be so harsh.
Yeah.
I feel like we're a harsh master sometimes when we study.
Mm-hmm.
To be so
scary for the ego to be on this journey, because it's the journey of undoing itself, and so that's why we are harsh.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a good reading. It's a good reminder of gentleness on the journey, and for ourselves, to look out and see our brother, because that's where we put our guilt, but it also means ourself, because we really are one and the same. Yeah. One of the sentences from that same section about magic says, "Yet since one cannot live in the world as a body without practicing magic, the miracle begins its healing work by recognizing our involvement in the material world and then gently bringing us back to the inward condition
Right.
of the mind's decision-making activity. Yeah.
Right.
So
Which section is that in the
that is the kindness of magic.
of magic?
So
Yeah.
the kindness of magic, the one that the title you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just read that the other day.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, it's right there. Yeah. Bring us back to the inward condition. Yeah.
Such is the Holy Spirit's kind perception of specialness, his
Right.
use of what you made to heal instead of harm.
Right.
And that kind of goes to you saying the harshness that we often
Right.
kind of
Use. Yeah.
on ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
Especially
Right.
on this journey. Yes.
Right.
The kind perception of specialness.
Right. That is nice. I like that. That goes back to the original message. The Son of God is guiltless, and in his guiltlessness is his salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's always the overriding principle.
Yes. We think that salvation is the guilt is outside of us.
Right.
Pointing a finger. Mm-hmm. But this
Right.
turns it right around and says nothing happened.
Right. Right.
Well, shall we wrap up?
Yeah, let's wrap up. Do you have something you want to read at the for the end?
I can find something if needed.
I mean, I have something, but if you
Sure. That sounds good.
Okay. So this is from The Gifts of God, page 122 and 123. And
Oh, I think I have the same one. So
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Is it how beautiful?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to read it? You should read it. Because...
I would like you to read it.
Okay.
Okay.
And that will be the end of the podcast, right? We're gonna wrap up after that.
That sounds good.
Okay. How beautiful are you who stand beside me at the gate and call with me that everyone may come and step aside from time. Put out your hand to touch eternity and disappear into its perfect rest. Here is the peace that God intended for the Son he loves. Enter with me and let its quietness cover the earth forever. It is done. Father, your voice has called us home at last. Gone is the dream. Awake, my child, in love.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a lullaby, another lullaby.
Yeah, I'm going to go to sleep right now.
Me too.
In response to
Still
this.
Still light outside, so I'm pushing it.
All right,
that
I'm
was
stop
great.
recording.